Let me check 1 minute, please. No sound. Okay, so as discussed earlier, today we are going to discuss about the topic that at free wage affecting the economic growth of India actually, because this topic currently in news that the different free schemes that was implemented, that is different flagship schemes, just like the government of Odisha are when it comes to know the government of Odisha just implementing the schemes like for farmers augmentation, the schemes called as Kalia scheme, and there are different schemes, midday meal scheme and other schemes that are lucrative. That is in order to increase their vote bank policy actually. The several state government, not only Odisha, several state governments has launching a plethora of schemes day by day in order to polarize the votes, in order to attract the peoples of that particular state for a particular purpose. So they are just prevailing a propaganda that our government is giving free education, free loans, free different type of amenities in free. So these are the things, and this is currently seen in news, Mr. The chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission, his name is Mr. N.K. Singh, warned about that the race to provide free wise to voters could be a quick path to fiscal disaster. So it may lead to a physical disaster. That was said by Mr. N.K. Singh when he was addressing a meeting at the Delhi School of Economics. So, in order this context, let us discuss what are the causes, what are the consequences, and the conclusion regarding this particular topic. Here, he said that free wage would be harmful for the long-term economic growth of the country and emphasized the need to distinguish between productive and unproductive forms of welfare spending. Okay, he mentioned that actually the free wage could be harmful. It may lead to a disastrous situation or lead to a very unfavorable condition, not now, but in future, which will be cause a severe economical problem. Okay, so actually the problem due to this free wage that are implementing by several state governments. Okay, almost all the state governments of India are trying to address the people or trying to pull the people towards them by implementing this type of schemes. And he emphasized on that there should be a distinction between productive and unproductive forms of welfare spending. So there must be a distinguish between the productive and unproductive means of spending. Okay. So now further proceed, we'll discuss. Need to look at the definition of free wage itself. So what do you mean by the term free wage actually? The term free wage gives you an impression of something that is a doll or gift given to the population. Okay, so that is a gift that given to the population in free in order to some cash or that is the government is transferring different type of DOB, that is direct benefit transfer to the account holders of the stakeholders, that is the normal population, that is Aam Aadmi. Okay. Now, political parties promising to offer free electricity, water supply. Okay, just like in Delhi, there has been the Kejriwal-led AAP government is promised to give 100 to 200 units of free electricity supply. Just like in other states, there are several schemes related to this. Monthly allowance to the unemployed. Okay, they are giving salaries or allowance to the unemployed person or unemployed youth to that particular state. Daily wages workers and women as well as gadgets like laptops, smartphones, etc. in order to secure the vote for the vote of the people. So in order to pull the votes towards them, in order to attract them towards their lucrative policies, they are just implementing or focusing on this free buy system actually. Somehow giving that is that there is guarantees work for Manrega schemes. Okay, so in this manner, they are prevailing their propaganda to capture the votes of the people or rural or youth people. Okay. Okay. The states have become habituated to giving free by what it in the form of loan waivers or free electricity, cycles, laptops, TV sets, and so on. Now the states are now this is it is an habitual action for the states to giving free buys. Okay, ये एक अब habitual हो action हो चुका है इसका हर state का to give free buys. Okay, to the peoples in terms of free electricity that I has already mentioned in the previous line. Okay, cycles, laptops to the meritorious students. Several governments are providing free laptops to the meritorious students in this scheme. Some governments are providing TV sets and so on. Okay, certain kind of expenditures that are done under populist pressure or with election in mind may be questionable. Okay, so actually these type of expenditures are just aiming, they are just claiming that we are doing it for the benefit of the people, but actually their larger aim or larger interest is to focusing on attract people for their in order to stable their vote bank policy. Okay, so these type of policies are questionable or under scanner. Okay, but given that in the last 30 years there have been rising inequality. Okay, there is rising in inequality. Some kind of relief to the population in the form of subsidies may not be unjustified. There are certain government is providing certain subsidies, just like your Ujala scheme. The government is providing subsidies in order to refill your cylinders, in order to subsidies in the fertilizer. When we are buying fertilizers, the government is giving subsidies. Agricultural equipments, the government giving subsidies and different type disease. When you are doing fish or cattle, all these purposes, the government is giving you subsidies. So he is emphasizing that this type of subsidies is good, but the rising in but the free buys that are the government is giving in the purpose of to stable or polarize their vote bank is not good for the future of the country. Okay, in there is a trend of deterioration in the financial situation of the states. Are free buys a reason for it? So there is a trend is going on. Deterioration or declination of the state's financial situation. Every state is borrowing from different parts. It is borrowing from center, it is borrowing from World Bank. So all these things are happening. And after Corona pandemic, the country is going through several disastrous problems. Okay, so here we are going to discuss that are these fee buys a reason for this or not. Okay, when the argument is framed as fee buys versus physical stability, a binary answer often not possible. Okay, so a dual type of answer is not possible. We are going to discuss it in briefly actually. Some of them are extremely justifiable. Okay, some of them are not, because all the subsidies that are given to the people are not bad. Okay, because the farmer, we know that our more than 60% of our population are depends on farming. So we need to give them subsidies in order to increase their livelihood. So we have to encourage the many youth in order to engage themselves or indulge in farming. So this much amount of subsidies must be given to them. But in these subsidies must not be given to every sector, or in should not be given in unnecessarily. Okay. As far as physical stability and financial deterioration is concerned, if you see the welfare spending of the states and if it is sustainable and affordable, then that is fine, and it is the prerogative of the political executive. So the government must indulge in order to give the different policy. That is the role of the executive, in order to make different policies to attract the people and to collect votes for themselves. But at simultaneously, they must keep an eye on that the financial situation of the state and how what will the consequence of this particular free-buy scheme. So this must be kept in news, okay? And if you are not keeping this thing in news mind, then the state is going to suffer severe physical deficit situation. Okay. So free buy versus physical stability. So how the free buy is going on and how the physical stability is going to happen in the particular state. We must understand what exactly we mean by physical stability. So what is the exact meaning of the physical stability? Broadly speaking, in common parlance, physical stability is a situation in which the government is able to deploy its physical policy. Okay. So as we have discussed, in every country, there is a central bank is there. The responsibility of the central bank is in order to implement the monetary policy, and it's the responsibility of the government, of the central government, to the budget or the finance minister to look after the physical stability of the country. Okay. So towards a long-term economic objectives, which are high employment and growth rate. So the employment rate must be high and the growth rate should be considerably, or it must be substantial amount. Okay. That leads us to measure the physical stability. So it must lead to us to physical stability. If you see the study of the state finance conducted by the Reserve Bank of India, as you know, every country has a central bank to maintain its physical reports, and in our country, it is called as the Reserve Bank of India. If we found that from 2005 onwards, in aggregate, states have added to the limit in terms of the gross physical deficit, which is the gap between the total revenue of the state and total expenditure. So what do you mean by the physical deficit? And the physical deficit means the mismatch or the discrepancy between the total revenue of the state and the total expenditure of that particular state. Okay. The mandate is under ceiling of the physical responsibility of the legislation, which allows them to keep the gross physical deficit with an aggregate limit to 3% of the total GDP. Okay. So what is the mandate of the RBI? So actually the mandate of the RBI is to ceiling, means in order to fix the physical responsibility legislation, which allows them to keep the gross physical deficit with an aggregate limit to 3% of GDP. So the physical deficit must be curtailed or constrained to the limit of 3% of the GDP, that is the gross domestic production. What do you mean by actually the term GDP? It is the monetary value of the all the service and goods produced and a country at a particular interval of time. Okay, that particular interval of time is normally 1 year. So it must be half yearly, means 6 months. It must be quarterly, that may be 3 months. Okay, so the monetary value of all the service and goods produced inside a country in a particular time period, that is known as your GDP. So in order to the physical deficit must be limit into the 3% of the total GDP of that particular state or nation. Okay. So only years apart from the pandemic years when these limits were breached were 2019-10 and 2009-10 and 2015-16 and 16-17. So in this year the limits breached actually. 2009-10 was a crisis year, and 15-16 and 16-17 were years of power sector reform, in which power sector debt was taken over by the state government. Since the power sector debts are taken over by the state government, so these things happen in this particular years. Okay. What is the trajectory of the outstanding debt? So there are outstanding debts. What is trajectory means? What is the curve that shows the outstanding debt of a particular state? Outstanding debt reduction has actually progressed quite well in the case of the states. Actually, the outstanding debt that has the states way to pay is happening quite well in the case of the states. For a high of 31% of the GDP, it came down by almost 10% to the about 22% of the GDP by 2014-15. After that, it has inched up about 5% by fiscal year 2020. So this is a data. This data shows that it was high about 31%, but it has down in a considerable amount up to 10%, and it comes to 22% of that particular GDP in the year 2014 and 15. But at the year 2015 and 14, it increases up to 5 points, up to considerable amount, up to 27% by the end of the fiscal year 2022. Okay. If we compare this with the central government's track record, this is the track records of all the states of India actually. So there is central government also. In the central government never has been able to adhere to the physical deficit limits. The central government is never cope up or adhere to the limit that has already been fixed by the Reserve Bank of India. That is, the physical deficit must keep in a limit between 3% of that of the particular GDP. But when it comes to debt reduction, the central government's debt to GDP limit is supposed to be 40%, but it has now crossed 90% of the GDP. So just imagine how critical is the situation now. It must be kept in between 3%, but once upon a time it is 40%. But due to the corona pandemic and other adverse situation, now the physical deficit has now crossed 90% of the GDP. So the problem of physical stability is more pressing at the level of the center. So okay, so in this particular discussion, we came to know that the center is facing the more problem rather than the state in order to maintain that particular GDP strength. Okay, the states are more or less adhere to that of the particular GDP, and they are trying to reduce, and their progress is quite considerable. But in case of that is the center, it is drastically high, and the trajectory is going up and up. There is no sign of to control or to combat with this particular situation. Okay. How much of this poverty reduction is due to growth versus the welfare measures taken by the center? Actually, what are the measures are taken by the center in this particular regard? The first point is, we don't have official poverty estimates. After the 2011 or 12, there was no official poverty estimate for this particular purpose. The only estimates that we have are from a number of independent studies by private researchers. So this has done by the private researchers and the economists in privately by themselves. No, there is no certain agenda or certain parameters that has been determined by the government itself. Okay, there is at least one study that concludes that the rate of poverty reduction has slowed down under the Modi government. So there is a study. Several economists have studied in several different ways about the poverty reduction at several times. So there one study has been done at the Modi government. So this study shows that the rate of poverty reduction has slowed down under the Modi government. There is also a consensus, okay, that the welfare measures such as the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Act, that is Manrega scheme, and the public distribution system, that is PDS system, has contributed to poverty reduction. So the Manrega scheme and the PDS system has also been plays a pivotal role in the reduction of the poverty in that particular area. But recently, there is Manrega is most of the time in news because it is facing fund crisis. There is no fund. There is no the fund is reducing day by day or from budget year to budget year in order to maintain that of the Manrega, in order to run Manrega scheme, which is playing a flagship role in reducing the poverty in the country. Okay, so next point is the strengthening of these programs has definitely contributed to poverty reduction. So people which are below poverty line are decreasing day by day in our country. According to the data, actually, really it is happening or not, it is a big question mark regarding this particular issue. It is a very controversial topic actually. This does not mean that growth does not have a role to play in reducing poverty. Okay, this does not mean that growth does not have a role to play in reducing poverty. So growth has a role, a very pivotal role in reducing the poverty actually. We are in slowdown simply because the demand in the economy overall has collapsed. Okay, and welfare spending has been able to at least prevent consumption demand from falling any further. So these are the cause actually which are creating problems in order to come back with this particular situation. Now comes to the question: what portion of spendings by state is productive rather aimed simply at gaining votes in election? So this is a very important issue. So how much the state must be spent in that particular issue or in the public spending, rather focusing on free buys to polarize the vote or attract the vote towards them. In a democracy where political parties try and get votes from every section of the population, there is obviously a tendency for state governments to try and provide some kind of relief to voters. Okay, so this is happening that we have discussed in the earlier. For example, the Manrega type of spending and subsidy in the form of a food ration schemes. These go a long way in increasing the productive capacity of the population. So they are not just dolls. Okay, so in order to increase the productive capacity of the state, the Manrega schemes are playing a flagship role. Okay, so next point is they built a healthier and a stronger workforce, which is necessary part of that growth strategy. Okay, so they are making just a strong strategy in order to come back with this particular problem. Fourth point is that this is similar to a state spending on education or health. So every state spends money in order to fulfill the basic amenity of the people, that is the basic need, that is in education and health. One can call these as an investment for long term basis. Okay, so if you are investing in our health, so it is going to give benefit in the future. And also if you are spending money on education, so we are building our human resources which are going to help in future to us. Okay, but yes, there are obviously cases where state governments have gone astray and have gone into providing all sorts of privilege or keep. So this must not be the case that the people should not be due to a habituated action of giving free buys in every time, so that there should be a physical deficit will be created in the state. Okay, but when it comes to simply giving away loans waivers, experts are not in favor because they are undesired consequences such as destroying the whole credit culture. Okay, and it blurs the very basic question as to why is it that a large majority of the farming community is getting into a debt trap repeatedly. Okay, so this is a big question, and also the the survey conducted, that is every year published by the economic survey, the people are now having the habit of not paying money to the governments after giving loan. They are know that, or they have a belief that the government will provide them a loan waiver, so that they have not to pay that particular amount of money. So the bank, there is a crisis in the banking sector happening, just like your scheduled commercial bank is facing this crisis. Okay. And the next point is issue of unproductive and productive spending. Okay. Now we comes to the fact that what is a productive spending and what are the unproductive spending. Sorry. There are always ways to restructure bank loans to medium and small enterprises. The event of a downturn in the business cycle of any kind of extraordinary shock. Okay. So bank loans must be restructured. That I have already told to you that bank must be place several steps in order to increase or decrease their productive capacity and to become to whom they are paying loan or to whom loan must not be paid. This must be keep in their eye. Okay. So the next thing is that we can talk about the loan waivers in the light of weathers and other risks, and also the fact that crop insurance has by and large always fail to offset shocks in the agriculture. So this is happening in the state. So in the any unforeseen condition that is happening in that particular situation, the farmers are suffering. So loan waiver is a temporary solution for this particular problem. Also, we are in a position where direct benefit as per that is DBT can be used to deliver loan waiver directly to distressed farmers, and the cost of the waiver is immediately taken on the government's budget, and financial intermediaries are not involved. Okay, so there should be not financial intermediaries are involved. It should directly taken to the government financial budget. Okay. The tendency towards unproductive spending is not more pronounced at the level of the state as compared to the center. So there is not this tendency is not in the center, but rather it is very much in that of the center. Sorry, it is not in the case of the state, but it is prevailing at the case of the center actually more largely and more riskfully. Okay. If we look at the social sector expenditure, and if we look to the social sector expenditure actually, 1 minute, 1 second please. Okay. And if we look at the core sector schemes, that is the revenue spending component is a high at 60.5% to 68%. So almost 2/3 of the expenditure is revenue expenditure. Okay. Now the next point is the issue of the unproductive and productive spending should be looked at in this light. Okay. And in the light of mounting interest payments. So this must be kept in a bird's eye in this particular issue in order to cope up with this particular problem. Okay. Now the conclusion is that physical stability is not just about expenditure, but also about revenue. So how much revenue we are generating or collecting from the state or center. And mind, the center also engages in giving out freebies not just to the poor people, but also to the large number of corporations. Okay, they are making loan waivers to different corporate sector also. There is a need to understand that the impacts of freebies from the economic sense and connect it to the taxpayers' money. Okay, it is also essential to distinguish between subsidy and freebies. Okay, as subsidies are the justified and specially targeted benefits that arise out of demands. Okay, subsidies must be paid to the people, but we must have to stop this freebies giving to the people. Okay, so this is all about today's discussion about freebies. Now we will see some questions regarding to we'll discuss just orally, and tomorrow we'll discuss in it in details. Actually, these questions are come in SSC CGL examination. So the questions are mostly factual. So what is the symbol of tin? It is a general science question basically. What is the symbol of tin? Actually, the symbol of tin is stanium, Sn. Okay, so its scientific name is stanium. So its symbol is Sn. Now the question is, what is the magnitude of the Indian Ocean tsunami 2004? What is the magnitude of that particular tsunami? And the magnitude was 9.1. Okay. Now to the third question. What does the New Delhi's Lotus Temple was designed by an architect from where? So New Delhi is the famous Lotus Temple that present in New Delhi was designed by an architect from Iran. Okay. When did the Sakaria Commission submit its report? So when did the Sakaria Commission submitted its report? So the Sakaria Commission submitted its report in the year 1988. Okay. Which plant does not have a well differentiated body? This is from science. Which plant does not have a well differentiated body? The answer to this question is Halophyta actually. We will discuss in tomorrow in slides these questions. Just I am just covering you about these questions. Bhaitali is the folk music of which of the following states? So Bhaitali is a folk dance of West Bengal. Okay. So which of the articles of the Indian Constitution has a provision for the legislation of the states? Okay, there should be a legislation in the state. Which of the article provides? So Article 168. Okay. So this much information regarding today's class. Thank you.